G'day everyone, welcome to the FOGS Queenslander Podcast as we review a terrific win in Game 2. Queensland 26, New South Wales 24. I have three very happy FOGS with me. Wally Lewis, Trevor Gillmeister, Matt Gillett. Gentlemen, welcome once again. Initial thoughts on what was a nail-biting but really gutsy win by the Maroons on Wednesday night in Perth.
Yeah, I thought it was, obviously the first half, we're very happy. But as we know in Origin, you're never over the line until that final whistle goes. And Queensland has come back from, being behind plenty of times. So, really looking forward to third game. So it'll be a cracker, no doubt about that.
Yeah, very pleasing, mate. Obviously with the way the boys started and the way they showed up with that mindset of we need to go after these boys with their defence, and I think they really would have been pleased with a few tackles out there. They're getting back under that ball and actually driving and put them on their backs. But very pleasing, and obviously I think a lot of emotion with what happened in that lead up to the game with a few media comments and what Bill was going through and the Aaron Woods saga sort of thing, and I've no doubt the senior players would have got together and said, "Hey boys, we need to show up for our coach tonight and do a good job there." And I think they played a lot, I suppose with a lot more emotion in that game and a bit more fire in their belly to put them on their back, and it was a great start. But like Gilly said, it's you're never done in Origin until that final whistle.
Yeah, and I think the impressive part that a lot of people sort of have forgotten about is just how tough they remained, how resilient, refused to fold at the end when everybody was suggesting the game's just about to finish in New South Wales way. Look at this, here we go again. So I think that was extremely good, and to be able to stay very tough when, the 36th minute of the game was the last points for Queensland. To be able to go through the rest of the game and hold them out and take control of the game was fantastic. There can be disappointment that we didn't score tries, but 4 tries in 20 minutes is pretty tough. And once you fold from that, it'd be hard to get that confidence back, but they didn't. They held strong and reigned supreme.
I'm just going to say that the intent, I said at a function with Fatty and Billy Moore, that we'll know in the first 10 minutes, 15 minutes, and that's Origin. You've got to go out there with that intent, and they did that the first 10, 15 minutes, and they carried it on throughout the game. And so if we can bottle that first 40, for the start of the third game, because they'll have to be better. New South Wales will be better. And of course they will. But our defence and our intent was there to see. And even when we had the ball, we're running harder. So that's got to be just a given for the third game.
And something that not so much overlooked but hasn't been discussed about too much is that New South Wales scored first. So they led 6-0, and they're the sorts of situations where when you've been beaten in game number one and you've been struggling to score points, etc., that it can be a real hurdle to overcome. But they then scored 26 unanswered points, Queensland.
I think we're under, Cameron Munster will put a bit of pressure on there, and he kicks the ball dead, and it gives him 7 tackles.
That's right.
And then Ashley Klein back to his favourite habits of giving 6 to goes again, and we'll come in out of our own end there for a while, so that that pressure turned around quite quickly, and they end up getting that first try, but it was a bit of a luck of the bounce and whatnot. But for our boys to show a bit of grit there and turn that around pretty quickly and put on some points, it was very pleasing. And seen Tommy Dearden in the sheds after the game, and he said it's hard to get that momentum back now in the game these days. Once you sort of lose that, and which obviously New South Wales struggled with the first half, and then we struggled in the second half to get it back. Not sure why that is, but he said once it sort of goes, it's hard to get back in a way unless a big enforcer comes out there and puts a big hit on, and they lose the ball. But for whatever reason, once that momentum goes, it's quite hard.
Well, especially when it's wet, right? When it's pouring down rain, mate, you should be hitting on the ball nearly every time. Not going in catching and doing them a favour and leaving the ball in there. does my head in sometimes. But if you hit on that ball and the ball comes spewing out, someone might be able to pick it up, goes through the hands. Someone like Wally gets the ball and try. You know what I mean? And that's happened a few times over the years, and I just think that we need to adjust our technique a little bit more again. So we're at Ruben Cotter, I thought was Kurt capable.
Fantastic.
Defensively, they were great. You know what I mean? So the whole team needs to get in that same mindset and do a bit of practice and bend your back and break a few ribs.
You got back in the camp, Gil.
No.
Hey?
Sometimes the biggest momentum change, it can be half time. I mean, we saw that on Wednesday night as well. You just know that. Well, you had this inkling, didn't you? 26-6 was a massive lead in any game, but particularly Origin. But at half time, you're wondering, and in Origin, it's a longer half time too, isn't it?
Oh yeah, that was their best friend, the half-time break for New South Wales. It was their best buddy, and they obviously spoke about the problem areas. And the difficulties that they were facing, but really, if that had been taken place just after half time, there would have been more points coming for Queensland. So I think they did quite well. We did it a little bit tough in the second half, but we held on.
Yeah,
that's the 1 point.
You know, I don't know if you would talk about that down the track, but. That's my head in too. Like Reece Robson, standing there for 4 or 5 minutes, getting there. Mate,
either goes off or
exactly right.
Yeah.
Fair dinkum.
What are we doing?
Klein
what
standing there going, okay. Like, mate, fair dinkum. Get out the back. Mate, if you want to
go away,
let's go. Or replace him with someone else.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
And if there's a
keep the game flying, mate.
If there's a cut on the head or whatever it may be, there has to be head contact somewhere. Does he not have to undergo an HIA?
Yeah.
In that respect, but it's not only at Origin level. We just seem to stop the game now. All the time for the last minor things.
It sounds like I'm bagging the refs. Really give a shit.
I think they're being instructed. I think they're being instructed to do it too.
Yeah, no, but I mean, like honestly, like. Even in the NRL games and they go, my thought is they're not fit enough.
Fitness is not one of the biggest keys in the modern game as it used to be.
No,
we're 4 old men sitting here talking.
No, just not the players. I mean the refs.
You mean the refs aren't?
I reckon they need a breather. no, that's what do they say 6 to go again all the time? We don't even know what that's for.
Gilly, I'm glad you brought that up because I'm sitting there watching and a couple of times, I reckon there was twice where I was watching the play and kept the eye on the referee.
Yeah.
The 6 again called and I thought, that's got to have come from upstairs because he's not looking sideways.
Yeah. Someone's
turned around.
They've told him the bunkie.
Well, the touch judges,
yeah.
And I, during my call of the game on SEN, I said 6 to go. I have no idea what for. I have no idea what for. If it's not worth a penalty, just let it go on because in general play,
or
you just let it go, or blow the penalty to give give the opportunity to kick 2 points in wet conditions.
Or Klein, if you can't keep up, mate, get out and get some young bloke in.
Let's not give the refs too much airtime.
But speaking of that, I was going to bring up. We've almost seen a carbon copy in Game 1. Queensland's ill discipline cost them dearly. In Game 2, New South Wales ill discipline has cost them dearly. Heading into Game 3, surely the word from the coaches has to be no penalties, no set just discipline and control the footy because we've seen how bad the discipline has been for both teams on the flip side in Games 1 and 2. I mean, at one stage, the penalty count was 9-0 to Queensland. You can't win games of footy at any level with that.
No, that would have been disastrous. You can imagine the panic that would have been, in the New South Wales camp, and surely the message that would have been coming down from the box about what to do. And I think that's when they started to make a change or two, and it turned out to be exactly what they needed. But certainly to be putting that many penalties, donating them to the opposition, certainly there needed to be some screaming going on the field about the mistakes that they were making.
Yeah, well, but we know it was wet. It was a wet game, and that's why you got to be a bit more cautious with the footy. But There's a lot more errors.
Yeah, but on the penalties, I mean, you're very fair on this. Did you see that it has been a pile of penalties for Queensland, pile of penalties for New South Wales, and it just seemed to be going on and on. That to me, I mean, usually it occurs. Whoever's got the ball, then you're a fair chance of getting a penalty.
Yeah.
And I'm getting it,
and you hang on to it too.
Yeah.
I mean, I got to say, watching the game, I didn't think that a lot of the penalties that Queensland got were unnecessary in that respect. I mean, the one Zach Lomax, that was a stupid penalty to give away at any level.
Yeah, you're right.
There was others. I thought Ashley Klein was in his rights, and should New South Wales have got a penalty too? Maybe, but as the game flows on, sometimes the referee wants the game to keep going.
There was
because
a couple in the ruck there that were set penalties.
That's hard. Yeah. It was hard to watch it on TV and see what the ref was doing. Was he looking sideways and making the decision against? Was he getting a call from a touch judge to say these blokes are offside? So that was a bit hard to make a judgment on that. But to see the way that they just flow on for the one team, then flow on for the other team,
we know that in Game 3, they need to cut the penalties out of both teams. Whoever does that is
more discipline.
Be a big chance of winning. What pleased you the most, gentlemen, about Queensland's performance on Wednesday night?
For me, I think we spoke about it in the pre-podcast about the finding a way up through that middle and turning the ball back under and really knocking down the front door. And I think they did that. A lot of times they'd bring Val, if they a few passes wide, then the back row would come under, or Val Holmes would come back through the middle. And I think we really made a pathway there for us to obviously score some points. But I think they just refocused on what we do well, and it's more direct. And I think we found out game 1 that we were trying to pass and try and go around them, and they've got some pretty good defenders.
I was happy to see Harry Grant get out a little bit more. Yeah. And obviously our front rowers got on the front foot a bit better, and we weren't one out all the time. There was a couple little tip-ons, and Harry was getting out a little bit more running. When Harry Grant gets out and runs, engages the A defender or the B defender, and that. And we've seen that with that Munster try. That was
just to push support.
Exactly right, mate.
And the footwork on Munster to get on the outside.
Of Crichton. But I mean, that was Harry setting it up a little bit. Was well engaged, and if we do that a little bit more. You can't do it every time, but when we get a good roll on and Harry gets out and twists blokes under and stuff like that and dummies and then straightens up, goes by himself and things like that, I'd like to see that happening a bit more.
It's just what happens when your front rowers get those quick play balls, and you've got your set plays and things like that, but as soon as that quick
just play footy,
all bets are off, everyone push up, your halves are pushing up, you play footy through that middle.
Support play that they had Cam Munster when he was running, whenever he runs with the ball, the biggest challenge is for the support players to get in position.
The right spot, though, isn't it?
Right,
because you don't know where he's going.
He doesn't know where he's going.
He doesn't know where he's going. So to be able to do that, and I made a bit of a big comment in the build-up that he's he's going to be the bloke that will win the man of the match. He's a guy that if he fires, Queensland will win. That old saying, he creates doubt in the mind of the defender every time he runs with the ball. And just to see the way that the support players were running into the gaps was fantastic.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up, because I was going to mention the fact that the number 6 was the captain for Queensland, and he just, like you mentioned in the preview, Wal, in tough times you often put your hand up to say, give me the ball and I'll take it forward, and others followed. Well, they followed Cam Munster on Wednesday night to see a Queensland captain wearing number 6 getting the ball as often as he did and taking the line on and wanting his mates to come with him. I just thought he was outstanding.
He was that was his 20th game too, so he got the Dick Tosser Turner medal as well, and they got presented to him, I'm pretty sure, by Cam Smith the night before in camp, so no doubt someone like Cameron Smith coming in and presenting that medal to him, and we know what influence Cameron's had on the game, so it would have been a quite touching moment there for the whole crew, and obviously Munster himself, but he was on fire.
Yeah, I made a big call a few months ago saying he's as good a player as I've ever seen. And I sent a message for the phone prior to the game. He's probably changed phone numbers 25 times since I wrote it down the last time. But to see the way that he responded to the challenge was fantastic.
Yeah.
And what was even more pleasing was the support that he was given from the Queensland players. Being in the right place at the right time.
You can't do it on your Pat Malone, can you? Especially in the Origin.
You used to tell me that.
Well, that was
some work you do. You do some work yourself, you lazy bastard.
That was one of the changes that were made, that Cam was anointed as the 16th Queensland captain. But there were other changes as well, and some of those changes we didn't mention in the preview. The hammer going to the wing and Val Holmes into the centres. We had, of course, Tommy Dearden coming in at half. We had Kurt Mann off the bench. Liero started and Pat Carrigan went back to the bench. Jeremiah Nane went back to the bench, etc. How did you see, gentlemen, all those changes? I know a 26-24 and a win and the series still alive, and one would argue that they were all extremely successful. But now you've had a couple of days to think on it. What about the changes, and how pleased were you with how they all worked out?
Well, we let a couple of tries in, didn't we, in our outside back, so there needs to be a bit more communication there, or, and get your body in front a little bit more.
Down our right side, wasn't
it?
Toya, so
exactly. They looked a little bit disjointed.
Well, he was defending too with Robert Toya.
A couple of seconds off. They were doing the right movements, but it was just not enough. Like the trail was just tip. If you're going to jam, you're jamming, and you hit him.
You got to hit them as they catch it.
Ball,
So
they'll fix that.
That's. I mean,
that's fixable.
You do your left on rights at training and stuff like that, and it's a mindset thing too. But as I said, when it's wet, that's the best. When they're lobbing balls over the top, that's the best. You should be rubbing your hands together and going, get this into you. You know what I mean? Like, and obviously we don't know what the weather. Hopefully, maybe that's our strength. The wet weather. But the wet weather footy for me made us get down and get dirty. Yeah. Honestly, made us get our heads in there and get physical, and that, because can kind of constricts everything, doesn't it? The wet weather, everyone's got to play a little bit tighter and be a bit smarter about it. So I thought when they started the rain coming, I thought, no, I reckon this is good. This will be good for us.
I think it helped with. I think what you asked there, Mark, about the changes. It obviously did work.
Yeah.
Having Paddy and Big Lindsay coming off the bench, and they add so much when they come on the park. And Trent Liero's out there, and he did a great job. Obviously starting for the first time in the 13, and as we talked about, he's got a bit of skill. He goes through that middle, but Capes on the edge, and Ruben Cotter, I thought were really good. I think they were tough. They got the job done. They made a lot of impact with their defence, which is what you want to see in Origin. But I think the changes obviously worked. But again, that second half is probably
they did a good job on Isaiah Yeo. But he's still got a few good metres into him. He's a good player.
He's a wonderful player.
Yeah, so they got the third game. I mean, we're still going on.
There was a fair bit of aggression, Gilly, too, that came from the back three of the scrum for New South Wales. I've always said that's their real strength, their dominance. But our guys were good in that they restricted the level or the amount that played in the game.
Yeah.
And I know so much has been written and said about the decision to, leave Daly, Cherry Evans out of the side and bring Tom Dearden in. And no disrespect to Daly, who's had a wonderful career, but I think we saw once again why Tom Dearden just had to be in that team on Wednesday night, didn't we?
Oh, he's a tough little God,
he's just everywhere, and he's that competitor that we see week in, week out, the Cows, and then he takes that same game into the Queensland, and when he puts that jersey on, mate, he's just everywhere. He's pretty direct with his running game and his plays. So I think that's a big thing that he can do.
And he carted the ball up a few times early.
He's not afraid to take the line.
No, that's right.
I'm going to get involved right from the kickoff.
Is that little ever ready
redhead
battery, isn't he? You just let him go
and he's a young man. He's got plenty of years ahead of him. He could well be a future Queensland captain.
Without a doubt.
One area of concern, am I being fair to suggest, was the Kalen Ponga under the high ball during the game. He dropped a number of kicks. He seemed to jump way too early on times or put himself in a position and defending a lot in the line. We saw Angus Crichton score that try. I know it was wet conditions. I understand all that, but am I being overcritical by suggesting that might be one area that New South Wales will be looking again to potentially exploit in Game 3?
Well, a lot of the fullbacks are in the line nowadays.
Yeah,
You know what I mean?
yeah.
Like,
It obviously spoken about during camp, and
Yeah,
they probably
yeah.
had to be better with.
Well,
Gary Belcher would be going nuts.
well,
slowing the play the ball
you don't
down.
have
He'd be
a,
going nuts, Badge.
Completely opposite to Badgers.
Yeah.
And he was a wonderful for his placement as a fullback. He was
I think
as
as a
good
bloke,
I've ever seen.
I think the coach might have was a
Played
fair
fullback,
player.
all right.
Yeah,
that's
fair
true.
play.
Yeah, that's true.
You know, so he could dissect Carlin Ponga's game.
It shows how the game's
better than
changed in that
anyone.
respect,
Yeah.
doesn't it?
Yeah.
You know, that
Yeah,
everyone
yeah.
has different theories. Badge
Yeah.
would be going nuts,
Yeah.
but Billy, that's
Position.
how he
Yeah.
wants his fullback to
That's
play.
it.
Well,
he
yeah.
wants
Well, they do come into the line. A lot of the times when you're a couple of metres off your line,
Yeah.
where years ago they, sweep behind
them,
the
yeah,
line. You know, like So I mean, probably a bit of both, isn't it? Is it?
I think you probably look at that first game and how they their tries were scored were maybe off those quick play the balls that were inside our 10 metres. So obviously
There's not much the fullback could do
you've-
about that,
Yeah,
can they?
you've got to put the opposition on their backs in that area to slow it
Yeah.
right down. And like we said, Billy would have seen that and said, "KP, I need you to do a job here on the line and add extra weight.
Yeah.
Those tackles that you've got to do." But
Yeah.
sometimes, like you said, it doesn't work out all that great. But
Well, the kicking to the corners now, if you're 30 metres out now, it's going to be kicked to that channel, isn't it?
Yeah.
You know what I mean, down that short side,
Yeah.
and to the that channel, and you got all your three outside backs, or and you probably forward your back row as well coming through. And mate, it wouldn't be an easy job. Seeing, 3 or 4 big boys coming,
Absolutely.
and they know that you're going to get
Get
whacked
smashed,
every
yeah.
time. They're going to wait for you to catch it, and then bang, they're going to hit you.
Sometimes it's harder to pick the ball up on the ground
Yeah.
when it's wobbling around on the ground when you've got footsteps coming as
Well,
well.
I remember that these blokes spoke about it years ago about putting it on the ground when it's wet too. It's a lot harder to pick up off the ground, isn't it?
Oh,
When it's wet.
Yep. Yeah, it's hard to race in and pick it up while it's
Yeah.
still rolling
Wobbling,
across
yeah.
the turf. The ball's always slippery in those conditions, and you just got to make a call, be a brave judge, and hope that it's the right decision at the right time.
What year was it when you kicked and it hit across the bar and GD picked it up off his toes? What year was that?
85, 86?
85.
85.
Oh boy!
At the
Remember.
SCG
Yeah. And I still remember that, and he picked it off
of his toes.
Yeah.
his toes. And
Yep, and they were the worst conditions that we ever played in.
Yeah,
ever.
yeah.
And that was the same game Noel Cleo, I think, missed the ball
Well,
completely
From
with
the
the goal
drop
line
kick,
dropout.
he
Yeah.
dropped it and it didn't bounce. It just sat there in the mud.
And you got a penalty, didn't
And
you?
we got a penalty.
Yeah.
Kick the goal.
Yeah.
Anyway, looking ahead to game number 3, which is still a couple of weeks ago, and this is the nervous time, isn't it, for both Billy Slater and Laurie Daly, hoping that his key players can get from now until July 9, because we've seen New South Wales lose Mitch Moses in training.
Yeah.
Mitch Barnett did his knee, was out for the year.
Well, Nathan Cleary
now has a groin injury. Brian To'o.
groin, quad.
Well,
What is it?
same.
Hang on.
Groin.
Who knows? Who
know.
knows?
Brian To'o.
Is that a cockroach? What is that?
Brian
It is.
Brian To'o with a leg injury as well, taken into the game. Tino, that sternum he injured against the Broncos a couple of weeks back across the road. He only had 50 or 60 metres, but gutsed it out. You could see it was really worrying him. It's a nervous couple of weeks heading into the decider when your players are still going to play games for their clubs.
Yeah, and you want them to go back and play well
Yeah,
for their
yeah.
clubs too. You know what I mean? So
They've just got to bank what they've done and just get on with their job now and
Yeah.
go play well, because you can't be thinking about I've got game 3
well,
coming up
everyone's
or whatever.
everyone's fit enough, so
Yeah,
that's not an issue. I mean,
We're getting into the sore
physically-
part of the
yeah,
season,
exactly
aren't we?
right. Yeah. Oh, I don't know. You need a bit of luck, don't you?
Yeah,
You get
yeah.
through at this time
Yeah.
of the year, and obviously you could tell that Nathan Cleary had a little bit of an issue.
Yeah.
He's he's and their goal kicking as well
Yeah.
was off. So
As it was in game 1 too.
yeah. And if he doesn't, I've seen it, in the Australian side, mate, he'll stay an hour. He'll be there an hour and a half after training, finishing his kicking and stuff like that. And if he couldn't, I reckon he's one of them blokes. If he couldn't do that, it would have messed with his head. Yeah. So if he couldn't do it, and then the physio or the doctors would have said, no, mate, you're not going to be doing any after training kicking. That would have messed with his head. He's OCD in that regard, I can tell you. Yeah.
And just finally, Sydney doesn't phase Queensland playing down at the Court Stadium. I don't believe. I think that same as New South Wales. I don't think any longer phased by playing at Suncorp. Everyone loves playing at Suncorp. I think
What's
Queensland,
the stats there?
Gilly,
come on, you're the stats man.
Might have to edit that in, but anyway,
Simon,
I don't think that Queensland will go to Sydney with any fear
There's no fear.
No.
You're right, mate. There's no fear. They played that many times, both at club level, where it's pretty common now. So that's not going to be fearful for them. What I used to say to Gilly, mate, let's make sure that we're not fearful of winning the game. We've got to go out and make sure that we're quite dominant and quite determined to achieve a victory. I was going to say that word, but I thought I can't say that. I can't. I've got to think of another word. So now you know why I was trying to think of a number 14 word. Yeah.
Well, we're now looking forward to game number 3, July 9 at Accor Stadium. 1-1 is the score between Queensland and New South Wales. There's something special about a decider. Make sure you join us for our preview on July 7, I think it is, the Monday. We'll be dropping that. So make sure you like and subscribe so you don't miss our preview for game number 3. But on behalf of Wally Lewis, Trevor Gillmeister and Matt Gillett, I'm Mark Braybrook. Bye for now. Thanks for watching this episode of the FOGS Queenslander Podcast. If there's a FOG you want to hear from, leave a comment to let us know. And don't forget to like and subscribe so you don't miss any of our videos.